Ariana Duval had built an empire with her bare hands, turning a tiny storefront into an international brand worth billions, but the higher she rose, the more distant her world became. The cameras loved her, the magazines worshipped her, and the boardrooms feared her, yet nothing hurt more than knowing the three people she loved most barely knew her. She left home before sunrise, came back long after bedtime, and her triplets, Mia, Elise, and Harper, were growing up with nannies, schedules, and silence instead of bedtime kisses. On that sunny afternoon, when a cancelled flight brought her home earlier than expected, Ariana expected an empty house and the usual hush. What she walked into instead stopped her heart cold. If you believe in kindness, redemption, and life giving people second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul Moment Story before the next part unfolds. Ariana froze at the doorway, her jaw slack, her mind spinning. Her triplets, always shy, quiet, and cautious around strangers, were laughing harder than she'd ever seen. They sat on the kitchen counter in matching red dresses, giggling uncontrollably while a man in a navy jumpsuit stood in front of them wiping soap bubbles off his face as if he'd been splashed on by accident. The girl's small hands clung to him with an ease Ariana had never earned. He didn't notice her at first, too busy brushing a loose curl from little Elise's forehead and whispering something that made her burst into laughter again. Then one of the girls, Harper, sitting on his shoulders, caught sight of Ariana and gasped. The man turned, and the warmth in his eyes faded into panic. He wasn't a family friend. He wasn't a hired sitter. He wasn't someone from her world at all. He was Mateo Cruz, the janitor who cleaned the building cafeteria at Ariana's headquarters. She had seen him in passing once or twice, barely acknowledged him. Now he stood in her kitchen, holding her daughter like she belonged to him. Ariana's voice trembled when she finally spoke, not with anger, but disbelief. She expected the worst, that he had broken in, that her daughters were in danger, that something terrible was happening behind their laughter. But the girls jumped from the counter and ran to her, tugging her hand, begging her to come closer and meet Mr. Mateo, the funnest friend in the world. Harper explained through giggles that he fixed the leaky sink and made a bubble waterfall, and Mia added that he read them a story while the nanny was outside. Ariana turned to Mateo sharply. His hands shook as he apologized, explaining that the nanny slipped and sprained her ankle in the garden. He rushed to help her inside and the girls were crying and scared, so he stayed until she felt better. Ariana wasn't satisfied. Billionaires aren't trained to trust easily. She checked the security footage herself, every second, and found nothing but genuine kindness. He comforted the girls, cooked them lunch when they said they were hungry, and fixed the sink that had been broken for weeks. Not once did he overstep. If anything, he acted the way a father would. Her chest tightened painfully. Ariana tucked the girls into bed that night. Instead of running to their toys or videos, they begged her to sing to them. They wrapped their arms around her neck and held on as if she might disappear again, because that's what she always did. For the first time in years, she stayed. She stayed until they fell asleep. She went downstairs and found Mateo packing tools quietly by the door. He spoke first, telling her she didn't need to worry, that he wasn't trying to cross boundaries, that he would never take advantage of a family, much less the vulnerable innocence of 3 little girls. His sincerity disarmed her more than any threat could have. She asked him to sit. He hesitated, but he did. Mateo told her his story, not to beg, not to excuse, but because she asked. He had once been a teacher in Venezuela. His wife and son were killed in gang violence, and after losing everything, he fled the country searching for safety. His teaching degree wasn't valid in the new system. The only work available was janitorial. "I don't mind cleaning floors," he said softly. What hurt was losing the chance to guide children again. His voice broke when he admitted that her daughters reminded him of his lost child, not in appearance, but in gentle curiosity, in how they lit up when someone truly paid them attention. Ariana, stone-cold, calculated, unstoppable in her world of power, felt her shield crack in front of a man who had nothing but kindness to offer. She realized success had convinced her she could provide for her children with money when all they wanted was presence. He wasn't a threat. He wasn't taking anything from her. He had given the girls what their own mother had not. The next morning, Ariana didn't go to work. She took the girls to the park. She held their hands. She listened. They were shy at first, because they weren't used to her attention, but they melted one moment at a time. That night she told her board she was restructuring her schedule permanently. She refused every investor who spit phrases like, "sacrifice family for legacy." Ariana wasn't losing her daughters to a calendar anymore. Weeks later, she called Mateo to her office, not for punishment, but for an offer. She had found a way to transfer his certification, verified his teaching license, and reached out to a private school she funded. She wanted him to teach again. He wept when he signed. Years passed, and Mateo remained in the girls' lives, not as a janitor, not as an employee, but as family. Their teacher. Their mentor. Their friend. And Ariana, finally present and whole, never again came home to silence. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Soul Moment Story. Your support helps more emotional and powerful stories reach those who need them. Speech balloon special request. Comment, family is everything. If you believe love, not money, is what makes a home. And remember, sometimes the people society overlooks are the ones with the biggest hearts.